Hey, this is part 2 of today, Friday, August 2nd. And right now we have Wolfgang, and he's continuing his journey into WX so we don't suffer so much. An important thing that he's talking about is file access, because that's what we're all about. So with that, we're looking forward to number 3. Here you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for having me again, Arnold, and I'm glad that there's a few people around to actually listen to me. So, what I want to go into, we've been talking about different things in the past too, but before we get into the actual screen layout and how to make a little app or something like that, I thought we'll just jump to the file access bit of the coding and how to go about it. Because I think at the end of the day, all applications, there's very few applications which don't have a database at the back end, which you need to get the data and work with it and massage it and update it and do whatever you need to do to make the things happen. So I thought I'll jump into that section first and then have a bit of a chat on that and then get the idea, but the ball rolling, and then we can go to the next phase. I know PCSOFT has got a user manual which you can start and learn to program, and they tend to dive into the screen and the RAD things, etc., and kind of leave the coding very much alone. I'm thinking let's try and get this a little bit more behind you, that when you get to the screen side, then it becomes more also sensible coding behind it, I think. So um, let's start with the sections. What we do mostly, and what most customers see, is what we call the CRUD functionalities, which is basically the add, the modify, and the delete. And WinDev has got one extra one. It's called the cross record, which is slightly different from the delete. The delete actually just takes it out of the database and dereferences all the keys to that particular record. And WinDev doesn't physically remove that record in the database, which I'll show you later on. You can actually physically recover it again by undeleting it,
Oh, I
basically.
like that.
But
I like that. That's great.
at the same time, if you don't undelete it and somebody does add, modify, or any modification to a record, it might then overwrite that slot or that record. So just keep that in mind. Where the cross is a slightly different one, which is a little derivative of the delete, I would say, which does the same as a delete, but it marks it as crossed. So it actually sits there and never gets deleted or overwritten by a next added record. So which is quite nice if you want to do something in those lines, just have it around sitting there, but not actually showing to the end user, because what happens is once you cross that record, WinDev dereferences it from the keys and also displaying capabilities of it, or the normal um, retrieving of the records. Um, just going on about retrieving the records, when you do a seek or a read or get on your database, it will not consider the cross unless you do what we call a record number retrieval. Then it will get it. But otherwise, as what they call browsing, which I'll get into, you will skip over it just like a delete. But the nice thing about the cross one, it doesn't um, disappear off your database. The only time it will is when you do what we call a pack, and then it will take all the deleted and crossed out records, well, deleted, the pack to take the crossed records off the record, out of the equation. But if you just do a normal indexing and repair or anything else, the cross record sits and stays there. Now, the next part we got in WinDev, which is very, very interesting and I find very nice, is that, like example, in many languages, if you have to display variables uh, or do an edit on control on the screen, etc., you have to assign those values from the record buffer into the screen. Uh, let's call it buffer variables, etc. by saying variable A equals the file variable A. Then screen variable B equals file variable B, and so forth down the list. And WinDev made it very easy for us to do that, and we just do what you call screen to file or file to screen. And if you're doing web dev stuff, it will be to I think it's a page. But all it does is it's a kind of a deep assignment, and you don't have to worry about remembering it all, and you link it in the window, which we'll go down later on and learn about how to
So
do that.
when you take it to the screen from the file, I take it uses the same name, maybe with a different prefix. Is that what it?
No, it depends what you name your control, and we used to use like stc for static or string underscore, or edit field would be edt if you use a programming charter, that kind of thing. So you'll have in the columns of a table will be col underscore. So it will then take the customer name and assign it to the col underscore customer name in the table column. But it's in the windows. I can show you how it's done, which is quite straightforward and simple. There's nothing really to it, and you don't have to worry about it because you can assign it as you put the controls down, and it does all the coding behind it for you, basically.
Hey, I'm still fascinated by your previous slide. Can I ask you a question on the H cross? Is
Yes.
that H cross? I can do that with SQL, ODBC, and everything, or is that just hyperfiles?
This is all you've got to do is hyperfiles. I'm talking from a hyperfile point of view today,
Okay,
more than
okay.
anything else. The reason why is if we start talking about other native accesses, it gets quite kind of complicated because Postgres versus Microsoft versus hyperfile, each one's got its nuances, and it's best to leave it to each one its own.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're gonna have too many variables and confuse the issue. Yeah.
Okay. So H cross, I got to be careful. Okay.
Just check, like example, I don't think Microsoft's SQL, I can't remember ever seeing a cross kind of thing that you can keep the, like delete it, but it's there, but I might be wrong because I've never used it in Microsoft stuff. So I don't know about the other types of access like Postgres because I don't use it, so I have no idea. Ask Arnold, he knows Postgres.
No, you know who knows? LJack.
Okay, but just to come back, just to make it clear on the subject, I should have said that from the beginning. I'm talking from a hyperfile kind of point of view today. From here, you can spin out to the others, but what we're doing today is to the basics of hyperfile, basically.
Okay.
Don't want to make it too complicated.
Okay, and on your next slide, when I asked that question, I guess Carlos says you have to link the field to the screen, and yeah, I remember
Yes,
now. I
that's
remember
it.
now. Okay,
That's it.
and then Hal has a
Okay.
question, if you don't mind. Hal, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay, Wolfgang, when we do a screen to file, in the technical aspect, are we going from screen to file to actually a record buffer within your local memory? Or does it
Okay.
immediately go to
Can
RTX?
I stand over and I'll show you? I've got an application which we're going to go into.
Because the
Then
question,
I'm sure you'll get the hang of it as soon as I
because
get
the
it.
question I had, hopefully you'll address it in that if we do a screen to file and it goes to a buffer, how does that affect multi-user operations and the recognition of the physical record?
I'll come to it. I'll show you in the next when we do the demo application.
Okay.
I'm sure it will click. If it doesn't, shut again. Okay. All right. The next thing we are talking about the different type of functions and procedures which I've got, which we can use. There's quite a few of them, and the gist of it is basically there's the one lot is what they call just basically without the read in it, which basically means you can get the record, but it doesn't fill in the buffer. It just retrieves a record number, which I'll get into it in the demo. It won't make sense while I'm explaining it, but when we get to a few examples, it will start making sense. But with that said, the one is read. The key word is read. When you see the word read, it means it physically gets a whole record, including the record number. There's a hidden record number which you don't see. Well, you do see if you do a WMAP, WD map, you can see it, but it's not part of your column or what they call an item. So it's a file which is hidden away. We'll get to a column hidden away, which WinDev itself is called the record number. So the read will then do that and fill the buffer by reading it into it. So if you don't see the word read in it, that means it's just retrieving the record number and not the buffer. And the reason being is that I thought, oh, that's kind of crazy. What can you do with something which you just retrieve a record number? It doesn't make sense to me, because that's a waste of time. How are you going to manage the data? How are you going to update it? How are you going to see it? Once you sit down and actually go back to real world examples, like example, I've got this one SMS program which sends SMSs out, and we log every SMS, and to come to end of a week or end of the month or whatever, you want to go and bill the guy how many SMSs goes out. So instead of doing a read, which is very much more slower than the normal HSeek and HSeek first and next kind of thing, next and sub. So what happens is you actually then just doing what WinDev calls browsing, which in Clarion terms is a set next. Okay, so what happens is you go do a set next in Clarion terms, or browsing in WinDev terminology. Then you can go zip through it without retrieving the full buffer of the record. So you can actually go through it and it just gives you the record numbers, and you just count that. And once you've counted all that, which is in magnitude order faster than doing a read, so you can go have a child record table which says this is the client and this SMS is sent. So you can fly through that just doing H next, etc., and pick up all the SMSs sent for that guy without actually physically reading each record into the buffer, which is very nice because it's an order of magnitude faster than the read. The times when you want to do the read is actually when you're actually doing like a month end and you want to add up all the invoices. Then you need to get the items or the columns read in to be able to total them to do something about it. And I don't see that you'll use HSeek and HNext, etc. often, but it's nice for things where you want to tally up like a SMS, how many SMSs are sent, how many emails were sent for this client, or how many job cards is there. Instead of reading the buffer in every cycle, or your set next or browsing, you just do the record number count, basically. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions there?
Well, that's brilliant. No question.
Okay, next thing. If there's no questions, practical examples. I can talk about it all the time, but it doesn't kind of gel in your brain because that took me a while to get the hang of it. So let's go and do some examples. Where's my... I've done this little application. I call it a little application. It just looks like a big screen, but it's actually not a big application. It just looks hectic, but once we get into it, you'll see it's actually quite simple. Let's look at what I've done here. In this corner over here, I've laid out just what the record looks like. And I was talking about that record number. And that record number is automatically generated when they've, irrespective of your columns. It's called the record number. As you can see, let's go quickly to the actual table. All right. You'll see at the end of the day, I made it very simple that we can follow easily with this example. It's basically just 5 fields. And if you look in the top corner over here of our testing, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fields. And the record number is the one I was talking about, which the H first, last, next, and previous, and anyone that doesn't have the read on it, like the seek file, is retrieving. And I've put it over here. Does it read it in? No, no, no. And you can see where it corresponds to no, there's no keyword. I call it the keyword of read in it. Wherever you see yes, you'll see WinDev has got a kind of a standard. Wherever it pulls in the buffer, the record into the buffer is a yes, and you'll see the keyword is read every time. So hopefully that makes sense. The only exception to the rule is the H forward and H backward. Okay, which don't actually tell you that they do read into the buffer, but it does. Okay, we'll get into that, what it does. But as a whole, wherever it says read, that's what it does. Then that is what is your record buffer over here. And the record number is the one only gets retrieved if the ones without the read in it, like the H next and etc., is the ones only getting the record number. Okay. So, and that is created on the fly by WinDev itself. And to go and give you an example, let me just go in quickly, pull up the, I can't I see that now? Okay, there we go. Just want to open this quickly and bring it across. Taking a while to open it. Oh, there it goes. Right. Wrong one. Wonderful. Where is it? Sorry, I'm just trying to find this type of file. I just want to get the table which we're working on. Open it before we started. Okay, there we go. What I've done is to give you a bit of an idea, put some records in, but if you look over here, this is their record number, and obviously we've got the 5 tables, of the 5 columns, which we've got here, but WinDev puts one extra in here, and there's one, even another one which you don't even see, which we'll get into later on. It's kind of hidden away, which is quite nice, and that one is called the H record date. There's another field and column which is hidden away from you, which you actually can see when was a record last touched on, added in, or modified, or deleted, etc., which is H record date, which is a hidden column which you don't see. So theoretically, you don't need to bother put in a field which says when last was it updated, because WinDev in the background does it without even you knowing about it. Okay.
Oh, that's nice to know. So when I build my database, I don't have to create that, and I don't have to have triggers to update it then.
Yeah, which is kind of neat. I picked it up.
Yeah. What about create? Same thing too, or just update?
It just does record last record update. It's not a date.
So not the create though.
No. Well, unless they've hidden it away, but I haven't found that one yet. If you do, let me know.
No.
Then I've got 2 columns less to worry about.
Yeah, I would be.
But I just thought I'll bring it up because that's quite an interesting fact to have in the back of your head to know about it, that this is happening in the background. Now, coming back to the actual thing over here, I'm deviating a bit. There's this 5 columns or items, as WinDev calls it, over here, and it's hidden field. And what I've done is at the bottom, most of these functions got a result, and when you push those buttons, we're putting the result over here. And then, of course, you've got the other functions of WinDev, which is, example, hfound. That means if you do certain of these functions over here, and if the record is found, it will then reflect as true. If it hasn't found the record, it will reflect as false. This is actual hfound is WinDev function for testing if you found the record. But out of curiosity, which is quite interesting, example, if you do a hread seek first, etc., the function itself, hread seek first or HSeek, in itself, the value what's returned as a result is, in all intents and purposes, the same as HFound. So you don't have to use, like example, HSeek first, and the next line, if found do something. You can actually use HSeek first. If HSeek first is true, then you have found the record. So you don't have to, in intensive purposes, use HFound in your code, because most of the functions, the value what's returned is the HFound. Okay. There is certain places where in the documentation will say, and I can't remember which function, I think it's H4 one of them, it can say it's found, but it actually hasn't, it doesn't kind of work with it. But it's one of those weird ones which I think it was H forward and H backwards, which doesn't kind of follow that rule, but I think all of them do as such. I use it always H found within the function I'm using. Then H out, just to step back a little bit, in Clarion days we had what we call the get statement, and then you got the other one which is called set and next, or set and previous. If you read in the documentation and the English, if you do it very quickly, you would not pick it up. But if you start reading it very carefully and between the lines, they have also got a get and a set next as such. The trick is to it is to realize, and they refer to a set next in their language. It's called browsing the tables. So if you go back to the documentation, I'm going to quickly just give you an idea. Let's just find. Just want to find one of these. There we go. There's an example. HSeek. Okay, why does it screen go away? There you go. They're talking browsing the records corresponding to a condition. That's when you see this wording in the documentation at PCSOFT, and you come from the Clarion community, think of set next. You're actually looping through the database. Okay, and I've seen in the community sometimes when the guys say, hey, I did this and this, H next or something like that, and it gives me a fat error. Come to realize that you have not done your set next. That's why it will fail on the next and previous set, because you haven't did your set command basically. So the set command is, like example, the HRead first and HRead seek and or H last, that kind of thing. Like example, the H last and first in Clarion terminology, it's set the key and then say next. That is HSeek first. But if you say HSeek last, it's the same in Clarion terminology, set previous. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, what I've done is, let's start jumping into using this application just to get the idea behind the code. What I've done is, what the button does is what it does. If I said it's file to screen, if you go into the back of it, it's file to screen. Simple as that. If I said H reset, it's basically, all right, I take the result and of course show on the screen. Show results, what I'll do is I'll show what H out will look like, what H found looks like, and also what's the record number. I'll go and call it, and I'll go and give you the state of the record, just that you know when you've done a command what all these different settings could be when it's finished doing its job. Okay, so if I did the ones with the key, you'll see I've got a little bit different. I say key to use, and I say, okay, if it's that, I put contact ID. If it's key used as a first name, all I do is actually just call the relevant one. So to set the key, we use it over here, and I just open up a pop-up window, which then gives you, let's just get to the pop-up window. It just basically pops up and says, what kind of key do you want? Contact ID, first name, last name. So if you look at over here, we've got 3 keys here, and we've got the primary, the unique key, which is the primary key, the first name, which is a key with duplicates, and that. So we've got the 3 keys. So all I do in the instance over here, I'm asking which key do you want to play around with next. All right. So every button I do over here is just doing that one functionality to help you to understand it. Okay, so let's go and run it, and let's go and do one of the examples first. What I've done is I've opened up I'll open the file table here. I've put it in a separate window. The reason why I've put it in a separate window is that the record buffer doesn't interfere with what we're doing over here. So you can see what's going on here. So table update, and yet it doesn't mess around with the record buffer over here. It keeps this screen clean, and you can follow through with it. So let's do the first thing. In any programming you want to do over here, and you want to put a new record, in Clarion terms, if you want to clear the buffer, it's usually clear, open colon, prefix, double colon, record kind of thing. In this case, we just say HReset. So just to make sure that this buffer is clear, you say HReset. And you'll see it comes back as a -1, and I say the result is true because everything went to plan. That's why I say some instances like these ones, it doesn't return based on hfound because it's got nothing to do with hfound. That's why I say be careful. All these ones over here follows the rule of hfound as a result. So you don't need to use hfound, but in the case where you want to HReset, obviously it's got nothing to do with finding a record or anything. So it will say true here, but it's got nothing to do with finding a record, so it will be false. And also, you didn't run out of it got nothing to do with the table, so it just ignore that one, and there was no errors when it happened. So let's do the first record. So let's go and put John Edison or whatever you want to put as a surname, and any phone number. And here's a friend's example for argument's sake. Now, just to give example, this is in the record buffer right at this moment. Okay, let's just digress a little bit, go back here. When you coming to Hull's question earlier, you go and into the edit control, and you link this edit control, which is called edit underscore first name. That is a local variable here where the record buffer was put into it. Well, you're busy working on the record, you're not working with a record buffer, you're working with a local variable which is placed on the screen, and it's called edit first name. Now you link it to the first name of your contact data file, okay, which WinDev calls items. All right, as you see, linked item or variable. So that is now linked. So if you've linked it, when you do a file to screen and screen to file, it will automatically do the assignment for you. If you said none, nothing will happen. Okay. And also take note, when you do link any items to a data file, like a contact like this one, and you've got two on the screen which goes to the same one, WinDev will warn you that you've got two local variables on the screen linked to a same item in the data file, and it's not going to know which one it's going to have to use to update the file when you do a file to screen and screen to file. So try not get into the habit. So if you want to put two, because like example, sometimes people want to put multiple tabs on the screen, and the one tab will have first name and the next tab also first name for argument's sake, then rather do the second one as none, and you just assign it in code, that it doesn't get upset about it. Just take note of that one. Anyway, so you go and link it together by doing that. So at this point in time, we're working in the local variables which is on the screen, and we have not put it into the buffer. So when we're going back here, we've got it in the local screen variable. Now I'm going to show you when I say hadd, and if I did not do a screen to file, let's check what happens. H to add, what happens is it says, okay, I'm happy, I've done the insertion, no problems found, no errors, etc. Now if I refresh the table, it shows you there's number 11. Hunky dory, we've got it in. But what happened? I've got no data. When you see you've got no data, you know you forgot to do a screen to file. because it's in the local variables, but it's not put into the buffer. And you notice over here, the HRecord number, which WinDev gives to you, is not the same as what the primary key is. It could be different. Okay. So if I go and say, now let's do file, screen to file, let's do that quickly, properly, and then you just modify it because we've already got it in the database. We're going to just modify it because you don't want to add another record and leave the blank one there, and you refresh it. There it is. Does it make sense? Everybody following? No questions?
No questions. Hal has a question. Hal, go ahead.
As I said in the chat, are there any multi-user issues being considered? And that we may have one person using this particular app?
Yeah. Okay. If it comes to this transaction logging, which Glenn this morning touched on it and is in his course, if you are just doing a single record update, there's not another issue because there's no breaking of the transaction logging. But what can happen is while you did, for example, I go and say file to screen, it brings back and shows you there's a contact ID, your primary key, etc. And somebody else goes and changes the data while you are changing the data. WinDev will pick it up and tell you and put on the screen example and say, hey, somebody else has been working on it. It's creating a problem. Okay. So while you're busy updating it and you're putting back, it will say, this is what has changed, etc. And I can actually create an example. Okay, let's see if I can run another hyperfile here to answer your question quickly.
Okay, if you've got you've
another copy, yeah.
You're doing a modify versus or add.
Yeah, let's do a modify. Just add is now when you come to transaction logging or two different people working the same one. If you're adding, you'll get just two records. There's no way you can check for that because you haven't a comparison record yet. So adding, I can do nothing about it if two people put the same person in. It's just going to happen. It's I don't care what development environment you're using or what language you've got the problem anyway. The problem comes in when you have got two people modifying the same record. Okay, so example or deleting the record. So let's go and get an example. I'm going to go and say, let's go, what's the record, number 11. I'm going to say number 11. I'm going to go and read that file in, okay, record number, and then I say file to screen, which is now sitting here. I'm going to do the same here. Should hopefully do that. HRead, screen, file to screen. Now wait a minute. Okay, wait a minute. False, yeah. What? Doing false. Okay, I'm not getting it to work with me. Why is that not opening the file? Let me just open it. That's interesting. So I'll just tell you.
Well, do you have to find the field record first?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see why. Okay, we've got.
Maybe you didn't say it yet.
Oh, hang on. I'm smoking a pipe here. I'll tell you what's wrong. You all don't get caught out by that. What I've done over here, I looked at the contact ID, which is my primary key. Okay.
Yeah.
And I said, go and get the record number. The record number, remember I said right in the beginning, the record number is not your primary key. So I wanted to get John, so I'm not actually getting 11, I must get number 8. There's no number 8. That's why when I do a read, it says false, because you can't find it, because there is no record in the table which is record number, which is 11. Yeah, the highest number we've got is 8. Okay, does it make sense? So let's go and get number 8 and then read it. It says I got it. It shows I got it, but obviously we have not moved from the record buffer to the screen, so we're going to say screen file to screen. There you go. Okay, now let's say it is an example I'm going to make just for argument's sake, and I say modify this record. It says it's true, I'm happy with it, everything went to plan, no errors. Now I come here along and I say, no, this is not John, he is Eddie, whatever his name is, and then say modify. It will override it because I've already done the record, because yeah, because I didn't do it. Transaction logging. But what happens is if you do transaction logging and there's a change, it will come up and pop on the screen saying there's a problem. I'm trying to get, but you'll see, Glenn, you'll agree with me, they haven't got a very nice interface as far as I'm concerned, which shows there has been a change while you were doing it. Just doesn't do it quite nice and elegantly. Okay. Let me just modify screen to file first. Let's see if I can get it done that way. Screen to file, I say modify, and in this case I'll say screen to file, and then also modify. Oh, there it comes on. There we got it right now. That's what happens if you've got a concurrency error. So if the one guy is changing it while he's read it in, and it knows that you're also busy editing, it will pop up and say, listen, yeah, this is what originally read by you, okay? This is defined by the other person, okay? And this is what you want to write to the disk. Okay, in this case, I want to do Eddie. So that's what you have to then validate. I want to write into file. So you choose, I want to do that one. Okay, and you say, okay. Then what happens is it does update, and you look there, and you change it. It'll be Eddie Edison, not a John anymore. Even though this guy wanted just to put John Edison. Making sense? Huh? So there is a check for that. All right. Looks like no more questions. I'm going to close that one up because we don't need that one. I'm going to want to work just with this one. Okay. So far, what we've done is touched on the base on file to screen, screen to file, etc., which makes hopefully sense. HSeek is like a clear record buffer in Clarion, and then add, modify, and delete and cross. Now, come to, let's take this as an example. I'm going to say, I'm going to end up crossing it out. So if I cross it out, then what happens, it will tell you I've done it, I've successfully done it, and the state of that record is crossed. Now if I do a refresh of the screen, you'll see John Ellison will disappear, because in all intents and purposes it's equivalent to deleting it. The problem is, let's do another one. Let's take, I'm going to take Peter Jones. I'm just trying to find the next one. So Peter Jones. And I'm going to recall him, and his number is 7, just to easily get to it. So file to screen. I'm going to say Peter Jones, I'm going to delete it. Okay. And let's hold our thumbs, because what I'm going to do is now I'm going to actually set the file, and if you show that Peter Jones is gone. So far we got record number 9, and what was the other one? Come on guys, remind me. Was it 8 and 9? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, 8 and 7.
So 8 and 9.
8 and 7.
8 and 7. Okay. Okay. So one is deleted, the other one is crossed. Now, if I go and put a new one in, let's just say A. Okay, let's put the
Put Andy Stapleton.
Howard.
Yeah, Stapleton.
Okay, we'll put Andy.
Yeah.
So we're going to put him in the record. Now I'm going to add it in. Now hopefully the deleted one gets overwritten, because usually it will take one which you've deleted previously and put in its place. So you say add, and your table is I forgot to do a screen to file, guys. You see what I'm talking about? So screen to file, and then you say modify this time, and it should be then correct. Now notice it's number 7. That was our crossed, the deleted one. That record number was the deleted one. Remember?
Right. The cross was 8.
Angel Stapleton took, yeah, the cross was 8. So as you can see, the deleted one was overridden straight away. And if I do another add,
Do Pete, yeah.
Pete.
Pete.
Pete's name. Uncle
Pete.
Pete. Uncle. Uncle. And whatever his number is. And then screen to file, and we do H add, and you'll see he's in the list. And he's 13, and he's a 9. It jumped over the
Because
8.
it's crossed. So
because it's crossed. So if I want to undelete the one, so what you do is go to 8, retrieve it by the record number. You'll see it says it's crossed. Screen, file to screen. Remember that was a guy. And if you do any modification or just hit the modify now, it says it's active now. Table is, there you go. Does it make sense? Why the crossing is here? Quite nice.
So, but you have to know what the record number is to find it, though, right? Or can you find it with your ID number?
You can, but you can also do a search on it. There's different functions for that. I'm just trying to think of what was it again called again. I'm just trying to remember it now. I can't remember. But you can. There is a way to run through it and pick up the crossed records, but I can't remember off the top of my head now. Okay. Sorry, I can't remember that off my top of my head. I don't use it really, but I thought it just to show that it's possible.
Looks
okay. So
looks like Hal might have a question again.
Yes, Hal.
Hal? Yes, I was just trying to be polite, and I have to go up and unmute the mic. But again, as far as you guys are concerned, because I come from basically a different environment, when we want to add a new record, we basically instruct an add, flush the buffer, clear the table, put your data in. Then when that's completed, then you end up basically doing a screen to file.
That's correct.
When does the in this situation, you've got a button for screen to file, but a normal application that may have 30 elements on the screen itself, when does the application know to do a screen to file?
You tell it. When you got your validate button, if you remember Glenn's example earlier, when you had that validate button, you had screen to file just before the H add.
Okay.
Hell,
all right.
Well, basically, what it's saying, you call it.
What I'm trying to do over here.
Okay, because in the current environment I'm in, I complete filling out all of the fields themselves. The last field, it writes it to disk.
Oh, you don't say save it?
No, we don't need to.
Yeah, there's different schools of thought. I'd rather have the granularity that allows me to choose when.
But as far as you guys are concerned, in a WinDev application, after you put everything in, then you've got to the user basically or physically has to say validate.
Well, yeah, you have to click the save button, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do.
You see, there's different thoughts on that one. Just to come back to that one, I've heard about the guys say, "Oh, every entry they're gonna save it automatically, etc." Yes, it's fine, but when you're doing web applications, it becomes a bit of an issue because you don't want to hit that server with every little button you press. You want the guy to do all his job and then do it. But with that said, if you've got a big form with a lot of data capturing, you might want to do it and put a button on the screen which says save here when you've done intermittent saves if you want to. Or alternatively, use a bit of Ajax and say every minute it just sends updated data. But I wouldn't suggest every time you hit a button or does every little change, send it up to the server.
Okay, all right, I can understand that as far as we're concerned in WinDev, WebDev, whatever, we have a validate action that needs to be performed when we're ready to actually submit this particular record. Now, if we're in a go ahead.
So Hal, I mean, so in the environment like I'm used to, I can either save or I can start filling something out, or I can start modifying, and I say, "Oh, I didn't mean to do that." I can cancel, and it didn't save.
Well, in our particular situation, if you put a field in and you put in John's, oh, that's the wrong information, then in my current application, they just do a Control R, basically a recall, and it basically puts back in that field what was there before.
Well, that's not exactly intuitive to me.
Recall?
Well, yeah, I mean, like an end user is going to know to do Control R to recall.
Actually, as far as I'm concerned, I do controls, but as far as they're concerned, they do an F3, which is on their keyboard, which basically says recall.
Yeah, it sounds like you're doing like almost mainframe old keyboard entries. Yeah, it's old school, man.
Well, there's about 600 million people out there that do old school.
Well, that
but
yeah,
anyway,
is that heavy entry? Is that heavy data entry, like continuous data entry? Is that what you're doing?
Continuous, because what they're doing, they're filling orders out for oil companies. You call up, name, whatever, we validate, check out, and all this stuff, and they're ordering oil, grease, gasoline, diesel fuel, and all this in so many quantities, applying tax to it, get a total on it, and print it. That's what we do.
Well, I think what Wolfgang's saying is if you want to go save every time you do a field, you just do a screen to file.
No, I'm not talking about every time or whatever. We're going in and doing a modify, and when we actually finish the last field itself, let's see.
Yeah, but what if you say you have 10 fields, Hal, and the last field you're almost saying that somebody has to get to the last field. A lot of times we'd fill out maybe the top 5 fields, the last 5 is optional, and when we get to the 5th one, we can just hit enter, and it saves the whole screen.
All right, pardon me then. As far as my current application is concerned, I know the function keys are different. They press at F1 or a keyboard Control X so that you can put in the name and address and city and state, hit Control X, and it saves the record, which is basically...
Okay, so Control X is like hitting save. Yeah. Your Control X is like to validate.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, so...
That's most probably your validation.
You're doing the same thing.
That's your most probably...
All right, so let me just get my head screwed on, okay?
So yeah, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah,
you just...
I can hear the squeaks happening.
All right, the other question we've got in the same vein, if you actually tell us to go out and edit a particular record or modify a record, does it go actually to disk and raise a lock on that particular record?
Once again, it's your option over here. If you do the normal H modifier, etc., it does kind of a lock, as you can see, because otherwise we wouldn't have known that somebody else has changed. Okay, in intermediate stage. So there is kind of a certain record locking and checking that it's concurrently correct. What you're writing back is what you started with, if it makes sense. So it's comparing the record you got first, and if you took 5 hours to do the update, by the time you get to write it back, it will check what's on the hard drive and say, hey, okay, it's the same, then it will put it back to it. But if it's not, you saw what pops up on the screen and says, hey, but look here, this is what you want to change, this is what the other guy has changed, and what do you want to do, kind of thing now. So there is a kind of a record locking mechanism.
What I was looking for, hopefully, is if I tell a particular record I want to modify, then it goes out and tries to put a row lock on a particular record. And if somebody else is messing with it and they're in a locking situation, then it returns an error and says, I'm sorry, record in use by Billy Bob.
Yes. Yeah. Once again, you can do that. There is functionality in WinDev to do the lock, and even in Clarion.
Yeah, you have to hold.
But with that said, in today's terminology, and as far as I know, and I think a lot of guys will back me up on this, you don't want to do a record lock on an unlimited basis because nobody else can do anything then. So what you're trying to do is to take a snapshot when you start your transaction. Let everybody else carry on also, because the other guy might just want to view the client. Is he overdue to be able to deliver it, or does he owe money while he phones in, kind of thing. They don't want to change anything.
If he's doing a view, or he's doing a next, or he's doing a previous and looking at the record, in my personal opinion, those particular operations effectively issue a no-lock situation.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. But what you do is, in today's terminal, I've not used the locking mechanism for as long as I can remember, and if I do, it's more like a transaction locking, and you try and keep it as short as possible. The way you're explaining it, you want to pull it in, do some changes, and if the lady takes 5 hours because she's gone on a toilet break and then gone for lunch, then nobody else can do anything about it. And then you have to run around in the office trying to, because, for example, somebody wants to put an order through, nobody can, then they have to run the whole office floor flat to find who the dumbwit is locked that record.
Well, in our application, it comes back and says Wolfgang's got it locked.
Oh, okay.
And then if you press on that, it says Wolfgang's in the potty.
Yeah.
Never mind, go ahead.
But the whole point is you don't want to that kind of thing, because I rather, in my environment and the way we've been using databases as long as I can remember, we've moved away from row locks, because it allows other people to work also and then do the job. And if he's too slow to finish up the date, it'll just say, hey, along, somebody's changed the record. That's what's changed for. What do you want to change? And usually it's just, oh, he's changed the address. I want to change the phone number.
Well, what's critical as far as we're concerned,
and the chances of that happening is also a lot smaller of an issue than the row lock.
Okay.
Row lock is more inconvenient to my end users.
Yeah, you got record locking and you got file locking and you get all kind of locking, right?
Yeah.
But what's important as far as we're concerned is dealing in fuel. If you come in and want 100 gallons of fuel and Arnold wants 100 through 2 different users, but there's only 100 gallons in stock. When we actually...
Yeah, but hang on. You're missing the point again.
Probably.
The way you want to lock it, you're excluding everybody while everybody is trying to do the job. Well, the method I'm suggesting is you lock, you do get a copy, I update it, but as soon as you want to commit the next order, it will say, hang on, somebody else has already done the order and there's no more stock to be had, even though you want 1,000 liters now. But let everybody else do the job. But if you do what we call a record locking, then nobody else can do the job in the meantime.
And hell, I think what Wolfgang's trying to do is show us the granular parts of this whole file access. Then you can determine and you can do whatever you need to do what you're trying to do with the fuel locking and all that other stuff. You know, you're basically reserving. Says, hey, I've taken 50 gallons of the 100 gallons. Well, then you write the code to do that. I mean, right now you have code that's probably doing that now.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. You don't have to use the way they wanted or suggest you to do it. As a matter of fact, you can lock it as much as you want. You can lock it on a file level. You can lock it on the record level. It's up to you. WinDev doesn't tell you, prescribe you what the way you want to do it. You can do it the way, whichever way.
Yeah, that's why he's trying to go through the basic pieces, and you can determine what piece fits for what you need to do, and that's what he's trying to go through.
What I was trying to mention is that we operate primarily in a multi-user environment, and I was trying to inquire is, do we have basically multi-user in consideration when we all do applications, or is it primarily just single user?
Oh hell, we all do multi-user. Yeah, we all do.
But there it is. You can lock the file. You can choose how you want to do it. It's your choice. Okay. I don't do it, but the simple fact is, for me, in our environment, we do processing alarm systems. We cannot afford to have a file locked while somebody is playing silly buggers when we have alarm activation, a fire going off, or somebody needs medical attention. We just don't do it. It doesn't make sense. So you have to look at your situation, what's important to you. And once again, you can choose the way you want to write it. If you want to have Control R or Control X to commit it, which in our terms is the validate button, it's your way. It's your decision. You don't have to do validate button. You could do your Control X and do the validation and saving it there. Because all intents and purposes, what you've described to me is exactly what we do. It's just using Control X, where we're clicking the validate button. Making sense?
He's muted, so go ahead. Keep going with your basics there, because I think that's what really key is. This is what you have available to you.
Yeah. Okay. But it's a good point anyway about that. But you have to look at your situation. If you're so concerned about something and it needs to be locked down till everybody has decided what has to be happen with that thing, then use record locking. But in my environment where you're working with fire and a panic and the medical alarms from a security industry, you can't do that. You can't wait till the guy is finished picking his nose and drinking his coffee. It doesn't make sense. So I'd rather have a screen popping up and say, hey, you selected the steering wheel. In the meantime, 5 other guys did this. And here's the results. What do you want to do now? In your case, what you wanted to save. So that's how we work it again. So I think in the result, you have to look at what your environment, and once again, horses for courses, as I say, you have to decide what is important in your environment, in your data, and what kind of method you're going to use to lock or check the concurrency and that multi-users can use and make things that the data stays intact. So there you go. Just for sideline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, if you see questions in the chat and Wolfgang or presenters talking, feel free to help to type and answer questions on the chat too, if you know the answer. But Frank has a question here. Can you see the questions, Wolfgang?
When do you do file processing as interest posting to all records? What if somebody had a record on the screen and the process hit that record before the screen was saved? Exactly what I just showed. I just did it with 2 screens. Um, of course, doing a process will take split seconds. You read it in and you write it out straight away. Whereas a user might take 3 minutes to do the job, updating the screen. So what happens is the end user most probably who's capturing the data will get that pop-up message saying, hey, this is what we had, and now that you want to save it, it's no more the way you think it is. That's it changes. Pretty much that.
Hopefully that helps, Frank.
Just waiting for his answer.
So
the balance could be blown out of the user. No. There again, we're talking about transaction logging. So if you use your transaction logging, which Glenn has shown you, was that telephone ad changed. Have a look at that one by Glenn's examples. If you do it in transaction logging method, no, the user will not mess it up. If you don't use transaction, yes, it will, because the user might just change it at that split second when you're reading it out before you sending it back out. It can happen, but you have to be very on a split second to happen that. But the point is, it's most probably one of those situations. Everything goes for a good 6 months to a year nicely, and then all of a sudden you get out of balance, like you say, because one user just at a split second managed to save it in between your balance checking is happening while it was reading in. He commits it, and then it will blow out of the water if you're not using transaction logging. So yeah, once again, you have to look at what you want to do and what you want to achieve, and if it's balances like a debit credit book or on a checkbook, or a cash book account, yeah, then use transaction logging. That's very important. Otherwise, your balances won't tally if somebody goes in between. Okay. So WinDev gives all the functionality for that kind of thing. So if you want to do record locking that nobody else gets to it, even though um, there's other people's in the queue waiting for it, yeah, go ahead and do it. But like I say, you have to decide what's going to work for you. And WinDev gives you all the combinations. I've used varying different combinations of it, on transaction logging, and also just making sure that nobody else changes this update. Like example, this simple contact number changes versus other methods. So just be aware of it. There's different things you can do, but each one's got its slight advantages and disadvantages. Like transaction logging is slower if you're doing a month end, because it writes a transaction log before it commits, and then it has to delete the transaction log and so forth. Where if you don't need it, you're just adding a slew of new telephone numbers in from a contact management database into your account system. No, don't use transaction logging. It makes no difference at the end of the day. I would say just add it in. So just have a look what you're doing, and then work accordingly. And WinDev gives you all the different capabilities of doing that. Okay, we've gone very much down the line over here. So far we've talked about this file screen, actually set, add, and delete and modify. So we've got touched on all those things. Now to come quickly to just on a sideline, every time you do a change on a hyperfile SQL database, it records how many changes you run. Since the creation of this database, it's done 57 changes. So if I go and just hit the modify button there and I read it again, it's 58 now, even though I have not physically changed anything on the database. Just because I wrote back the data, it says, hey, but you've written it back, because if you look at the date on it, there it tells you what was the last change on the date, on this particular record. So if I go and say, I'll go and change it again, modify it again, watch the time, it will change again for this particular record. So hidden away, besides the record number, there is a column or item which actually keeps the date and time for you, with when was the last update.
Hey,
So
Wolfgang,
every time,
in parentheses you have file. Does that mean that's 59 changes in that file? And is that the record? That's a record date change, but you have file in there.
brackets. Okay. Oh, that's a good point. I can touch on wherever in the code, not the code, let's bring up this here. Whenever you see in the code of, it comes from the syntax basically of WinDev. Whenever you see a square bracket, that's optional. You don't have to put the file name. So if I just put H version, close brackets, open brackets, it will assume the last file you worked with. So if it happens to be the contact database, it will retrieve the contact database. If it happens to be the telephone database, it will retrieve the telephone database. But if you want a version for a particular file and you want to make sure you are getting it from the contact database, I would then write the code as H version, open bracket, contact file, close brackets. And when you hit this button, it will bring back context file or database, last version change, version number, or change, whatever you want to call it. Okay, does it make sense? So wherever you see a parenthesis, so if you say H forward and you just close the brackets up, it will use the last table or file what any of the H commands is used, and then follow on through with it. So in this case, HSeek, you have to define the file and the key and the sort, but the options is optional, so you don't have to put it in there. So in the code syntax, in this case, yeah, everything between this bracket and that bracket can be left out. But if you do provide the file name, which is fine, but this you can leave out. And then you got another one which sometimes you've got a bracket here and the bracket is not there. So if you do define this one, you have to define the next one also. So just look at the code carefully and then understand that the syntax in this case, here's an example. You can define that one if you define the file name, you have to, you don't have to do then the search item. But if you do the search item, you've got the option of options. Or you can leave the search item out, just put comma, comma, and then put the options. Okay, so it gives you the different variations of what you can. But if you leave it out, usually when you're working with a hyperfile, the last file table you were working with, it will assume and will carry on with that. Making sense, Arnold?
Yep. Yeah, that's almost typical parameter handling, though, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so this is quite nice. I thought that would be good to know. Okay, we've talked about the ones which says read. It tells you it reads into the buffer, not to the screen. It's just in the record buffer. Let's now a good example. Let's go and use first name. Let's just get this one up here. It's all about first name. Now we've got quite a few people here. Now, if you look nice over here, I've got some of the searches. What we got is called generic. Other ones are exact match. So if you do an HSeek generic example, if I go and say I'm going to look for Pete as PE, so you'll notice it will then go to Pete first. If I do HSeek read first generic, it will find it. It says true, it's found, and it's not ran out of records when you did it. So file to screen, it will show you Pete Smith, and it's record number 5, and it so happens the primary key or auto ID is also 5 in this case. Okay, now you've set it. Once you've done that, you can actually then go and do the read next. If you do that, there you go. It says result is true. We found the next one, and if you do file to screen, you'll see the next person is Peter Komenos, which is in that person here, and record number 3 and contact ID 3. Then you go again next if you want to read next, and you'll see file to screen Peter Smith, which is a 6 and an 8 in this case. So you can then even go read previous. So let's go back. It should go to Peter Komenos again. So previous reader and file the screen. There you go. So you can jump back and forth, read forward, read backwards on the fly. All right. But when you do a PE and you do a exact match, you'll see that if you do read seek first, that's the kind of a keyword when you see first and last is in a way near like a get statement in Clarion, because as you know in Clarion the get statement you have to be exactly correct, otherwise you would not find that particular record, and that's how it works over here. With that said, all the options in all these ones can override the generic and exact match. So if you don't define any options, it automatically will be exact match or generic, but you have the option of overriding it. Okay, making sense? Hopefully. So I'm going to say HSeek first. Now let's just do HSeek and HSeek, and just to clear it out, just to avoid confusion. So PE, and you say HSeek first, and you say exact match, and you click on it. It will say false because of the simple fact there is no record which is just PE. Right. So HSeek will find it. So if you say screen to file, file to screen, you'll see it was still on the old record. Because it's false, take note, because it didn't happen, it will still have the previous record in the database. Okay, so if I just do HSeek screen, file to screen, it is blank, but notice the record pointer is still 5. Okay, it cleared the buffer, but the record pointer, remember there's two different parts to it. The one is a buffer, the other one is the pointer. The record buffer is what HSeek does, but the pointer is always still sitting there. All right. So if I go and say modify on that one, you'll end up making all these rows blank. just to show you that I'm correct, if you file the screen and you say modify that, and you reset that, you'll see it's blank because the record pointer is still there. Because remember, HModify is working on the record pointer, not on your primary contact ID or your name, whatever.
Oh man, that's dangerous.
Am I making sense? I'm hoping I'm getting it.
Yeah, I mean, when you cleared number 5, that was really clear, I thought.
All right.
Hey,
So that's one of the things that caught me out. I could not understand what the crap. I thought I said H reset, and I'm busy changing.
so if you hit H version right now, that thing should be like at 60 something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 60. There you go. Because we did one
Yeah.
change. All right. Making sense? All right. The pretty much of the rest. What I can give you, one other kind of thing. There is. I kind of come to this conclusion. If I'm not 100% right, please don't hold me to it. But if you look at the documentation, wherever you see key, and then you see item, and then you see key again. For a while, I said, you know, item and key is the same thing. And I kept saying to myself, because it kind of doesn't want you to do a HRead first on an item. That means any item. So if you try to do a phone number, it wasn't kind of happy with the item being a phone number because it wasn't a key. And it didn't make sense to me because it tried to enforce when you write the code to have a key. So I thought, this is stupid. I thought at the end, at one stage, I used to think this is all keys, which is not the case. Where it's a key, it has to be a key. Where they mention the item, you can create a H filter and assign the H filter to this item, and it will work with the H filter. I'm not going to go into H filter because I think H filter has got a topic on its own nearly. But just be aware that the way it says key, it expects a key, and where it says item, you can actually create a filter, nearly like a SQL statement, and then dump it in there, and it will do it for you. All right. Now, the other thing, what's the difference between some of these codes to the other? Where you see HRead first item, it's like in Clarion where you say HRead first set next, and you just clear the buffer. That means it will read the very first key, very first record in that key order, which is first name. So if I go and say HRead first over here, according to first name, in this case will be a blank record was 5, which is not going to be very helpful, as you can see. But let's just quickly update that quickly again. I can't remember who was that. John Peters, example. Well, I'm always coming to Peters, but anyway, Anderson. I'm going to just leave that and just modify it. Let's just start that over again. Let's do it again. HRead first, according to that item, which is first name item method. You say file the screen, you'll see. Oh, come on. Okay, did I update it? No, I didn't. Sorry, I was stupid. I didn't do file screen. Most probably that's my mistake. Sorry, guys. John Anderson, and screen to file first, guys. Don't forget that. And then modify. There you go, and then there you go. All right. Now let's do it again. The HRead first, because we're going first name. It should pick up Andy Stapleton, first name. Screen. There you go. All right. Now, this is like set clear record in Clarion set next, and it will start the very first record by the key. Where the verses, this one over here, HRead seek first, where is according to the key, but by the key's value. So that's where you say clear record, and then you say first name equals John, and then you say set by key next in Clarion, if it makes sense. This one is just setting the key by clearing the buffer and set next, and it'll do the first key, the first record in that key order. Where this one, with the first record by the sort order. So if you're starting by B's, it will find the first record by B. Okay, making sense? Hope so. Looks like it. There's no questions. Yeah, how item is a column name, and that's why I keep stressing the point. When I'm talking about item, it got me in the beginning when I read the documentation, it kind of lost me. And also when you're talking about browse, remember I was talking about browse, when they talk about search item and then they talk about browsing the queries. Remember, it is in Clarion terms set next. You're actually doing the next thing. If you do not do it, like example, I do a hread first over here, and then I say file to screen, you'll see that guy, and I say next, it should complain because I've broken set next. Just
Can you start that again? Just do a reset and do your example. Yeah.
Reset. You're talking about the set next, making the browse. Yeah. You HSeek to reset, and what I'll do is I'm going to just read in the middle of a nowhere a record, which is what we call a get statement. You're kind of killing the browse sequence. Okay. Although there's also a command which is a hread cancel. You can use where is that one? There is what we call hread cancel. But you can then call that to cancel what they call browsing the queries. Okay. So you can cancel it. I should have actually put it over here to show you, but I didn't put it in. But then when you do the next, you'll see this. Look over here, the H record number is not changing. Oh, it is. I haven't cancelled it somehow.
Oh yeah, the number's changing and it's going in its key to order, right?
Yeah. Let me just do this. Let's just start it over. I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go here and I say next, it tends to blow up onto you. Okay. Because you have no browse. And when I say no browse started, you must know you had not started the set next sequence. Okay. So if you ever get that, you must know you haven't
done your set, right?
You haven't started. Yeah. That means you have no record, and that will crash and blow up on you. So let's just run it again. If you do any first seek whatever, or set the first file, like example over here, first by this item and the contact ID. Just open that so you can have an idea 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll go according to the contact ID and I'll just say first. You see there's number 1. And then you could go 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, goes up in numbers here. And you can always say file to screen to see it happening. But that tells you then you've got your browse going. If you have it blowing up on you and it says any wording like by browsing, etc., then you know you forgot to set your set next kind of thing going. Basically read first or seek first and get the record into the buffer. You haven't you didn't put a key. What I'm saying is you haven't used one of these functions which has a key in it, which allows you to go to the next kind of thing.
So in other words, you have to have your starting point. Whoops.
Yes, you have to start.
Boy, somebody's mic is going. Hey, Carlos, is that you?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's okay now. It was the HSeek num. It was number 5 when it was looking into Wolfgang, but now it refreshed it to be equal to the contact ID record number 1. That's fine.
Yes.
All right. That's all.
Hey, Carlos.
Yeah.
Carlos, sometime after the webinar, you and I should connect up because your mic is not right. It's just really buzzing us.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay.
Oof. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Well, we got the message. So just to recap, the ones would say read, you know it goes into the buffer, which if there's no read in the function's name, that means it just gets a record number. Then the first and last is like the set command in Clarion, which gets the first ball rolling on your next and previous. Okay, so anything with the next and previous is like your next and previous command in Clarion. All right, and the ones which don't have, it's got extra bit of information like seek, is more like a get command in Clarion. So you are, no, sorry, I lie. It's more like the set next, but the one would say seek, was first and last, is more exact match, which is like Clarion, which is a get command. With WinDev, the set next and get is kind of a bit blurred, because the joke about it, I'll say joke, the generic can become a exact match if you want to, by setting the parameters on it, and each one of them, for example, hread, where's the hread seek first, by going over here, you can say, do you want it identical? That means exact match. So you can override the generic, and vice versa, where by default, if you're not using the options, you can then say generic. Like example, hread first, I think it is. You can do generic one. Where is it? Is it this one? This one is what did I say? This one is hread first. Let me go to my notes here. Hread first. Okay, that is a first record according to the search item. Remember, this is slightly different. This is where you make the H filter, or alternatively, like I said, next, which is not really a generic, is also not really a get statement one. Okay. The best is, what I'm suggesting is, get this from this code from Glenn, and play around with it, and just get the hang of it, because there's a lot of options, but each one's got its nice thing about what does where in the right place. So the ones which got sort, it will go exactly to that particular record. You don't have to assign the value to it. You just say this key, find it by this sort, and then you get it. The other thing you can look at it is, if you do exact match, if you go and say Peter, and you say hread first, which is exact match, it will go through and say false. And if you do file to screen, it hasn't found it, because there is Peter by first name. Oh, hang on, I'll lie. Contact. My first name, sorry, I got it wrong. Hread first is true, because it exactly matches. All right, but if you go and say, oh, come on, click there, and you go like that, and you go and say HSeek first, it will fail because it's not exact match. All right. So the seek is like a get statement, but also can be set to the next one. And I found that mostly what it doesn't say first or last is usually, if it doesn't say first or last, it's usually what we call a generic search. As if you look over here, it's a generic search, a generic one. First and last, it's saying that means it will find the first according to the item that's active. So you have to, it finds the first one. So let's just do that one quickly, and it'll be number 7. Let's just reset, and then either first. Actually, first, is it the one? Yeah. And you get 10, and you stapleton. Why did you go to the end of stapleton? Oh, interesting.
Because he's the first one in your sort order of first names, right?
I'm just trying to see how first.
His record number 7.
First name. HSeek first. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Remember, this one doesn't do by your sort value. It will be the first name by Andy. You're right. I just forgot. So this one will go to the first item in that key. So the first item in this key is Andy. But if you did it by HSeek first, in a generic sense, it will find then the first person, which is in Peter, which is this one over here, which starting with PETE. Okay. So just be aware there's two ways. There's one is the generic and the other one is exact match. But with that said, don't get hung up about it, because sometimes I've seen in code from other sources which do exact match using HSeek, for example, but that is because you define the options to be the extra. So if I go to HSeek, let's just go to HSeek, find HSeek, just to show you. Right down here, you can then do override the generic and say it must be identical. So don't just say it's a fast rule, which is kind of a bit weird, and you be aware of it, that HSeek can be like HSeek first by just adding an option to it to make it exact match, which means identical, which is kind of weird. All right, and the same was generic. You don't have the option. If you look at generic exact match, you can go in the opposite way, I think, if I remember correctly, and then make it that it just finds it as a generic one again, if I remember correctly. There we go. Okay, so don't get hanged up about that, but if you're not using the options, then by default it's that. I'm hoping that sheds a whole lot of light. Only one what's different from about the others, this one is what we call the HRead, is the record number, which it goes according to that number, which is as per WinDev has assigned its own unique primary key, basically, for the records. Where is that? Map. That is only inbuilt unique ID number for each record. This is what you use, and that's what they use. Okay.
So
that.
So Wolfgang, this is testing hyperfile SQL only, right? So you wouldn't be using this with other like Postgres or MS SQL or MySQL.
You can use it. I haven't personally played around too much with it, but you can if you use native drivers. You can use HAdd, etc., and put it into a record into using any of the native drivers or OPC drivers.
But it's not necessarily the most efficient way of doing it, right?
No, because there is, of course, the select statements or SQL statements you can use. Yeah, and you can execute it by using WLanguage, which is catered for that. But with that said, it's quite easy to use in WinDev's method. You create a window and you link the files to each field to the individual files. Let's just go over here. You can link these, go into the description, and link it like what I've done here to SQL one or Postgres one. As long as it's in there, it will work. We'll do the file, and that saves you a lot of writing SQL statements. It's much more cleaner than the Clarion was ever.
So when you write generically for any SQL backend, you would do it this way?
I would do it this way. I would do it this way because in all intents and purposes, is what I understand, WinDev in the background, once you do the HAdd, it does create a select statement and puts it in for you. So if it does it for me, I'm happy. That's why I'm paying the 5th GL language or the development environment for.
Okay.
Why would I want to write?
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering, people who are used to other SQL will use your query or insert statements or whatever, right? And so, but this works.
Once again, whatever you're comfortable with. You get the guys who want to write low-level code, then go for it.
That
I use the tools at hand.
Well, the nice thing is this one you can switch between all of them and not worry about it because you're staying at a base level, right?
Yes, and it's much more cleaner than most other ones I've come across, like between the different three-tier level programming. It makes it easier, and etc. So yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah, Brian Reed's basically saying he uses the H functions for hyperfile system and MS SQL, but when he has to do complex filtering, then he uses SQL statements, queries.
Yeah. Sometimes you know, like I say again, once again, look what you have to do. People argue about the merits of doing this way or that way. I write Hello World, a simple program like Hello World. Some people will do it this way, another person will do it another way in WinDev. Simple as that. I've even seen people use classes to write a Hello World in WinDev. Come on, there's another angle to it. So I think at the end of the day, we have to look at what you're comfortable with and what you want to do, and get the task at the hand done. As best as ability, and I think WinDev gives you the tasks at hand, multiple flavors or ways of doing it, and yet makes everybody happy. And I kind of like that because you can go as complex or as simple as you want. And also take into consideration, because if you do a three-tier level programming, which makes it easier when you're doing mobile, web, and Windows application, desktop applications, it makes it easier to be able to work between the three different environments. Then yes, use the tools at hand for that. But if you're just doing desktop, you don't have to do that fancy stuff. I think we tend to want to do sometimes overkills for simple stuff. You have to sit down and think where your project wants to go and what target market you want to reach, etc., and code accordingly. I think the ultimate story at the end of the day is to get the project out. And if you're going to never ever convert, like that SMS program of mine, it won't convert to a web application because you have to plug in a modem, and most people know to plug a modem into a web application. It just doesn't happen. You need to have a desktop application. So why bother coding as if you're going to do it for three platforms when you just need to work on one platform? Code accordingly.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Or that's good.
So let me end off. This code, I'm going to, like I said earlier, I told you, Arnold, I'm donating it to Glenn to be part of the training courses. May I suggest that people go and get his training course, because I've provided one angle to how to learn. Just like I like tinkering with Drupal, I've got a whole toolset of Drupal. I've got e-learning from certain websites, and I've paid for more than one course. Sometimes just getting another book or another angle and looking into it, if you're learning, it just helps you to get that tipping point of learning quicker. So don't just look at mine, look at what other people have also spoke about, and look at what Glenn has done for training courses. I really suggest it because I've bought it myself, and I think you've bought it too, Arnold. So have a look at it. It's just another angle, and it helps you get to the tipping point of getting productive a lot quicker.
And go to DevCon.
And go to DevCon. There you go.
Okay. Hal, you got a question or a comment or?
Question. I noticed you're describing your edit control and you're picking up phone number. Does WinDev give us capabilities to set up an edit mask for a particular field, like phone numbers, so we don't necessarily use the French format or the Euro format of
Yes.
year, month, and day?
Yes, you go over here, and then you've got a drop down and you can change it. If you go down the list here, you'll find somewhere along there's a phone number. But if you don't like what you've got, for example, French one, you'll see they've got a French one, but you can change it to your heart content to what you want by changing the format. For example, let the digits bigger than, but there is a way of, I haven't played with it much, but there's, like example, if I go and say, let's do this, and I say, I can't remember, is it zeros?
Oh, kind of like doing your own masking. Yeah.
Yeah, your own format. I can't remember, is it zeros? Something to that effect, just to show you quickly.
Get the help.
But is there any way we can do across an entire project or across your implementation of 18 to effectively say that all telephone numbers are left?
Yes, you can. To a certain extent, you can.
Did you put it in your dictionary? I mean, your analysis?
There you go. Are you happy?
No, I'm not. You're not here in the U.S. doing it for me.
Gee whiz. I'm not going to do the US. I'm in the UK.
That's what I said. You're not in the U.S. to do it for me.
Okay. To do it across all, you go to the contact dictionary there. You'll see there's a little arrow thing down at the bottom. Click on that.
Put the U.S. phone number for
And
him.
then you...
Just pick phone number. Just pick the phone number for the U.S. That's all.
I don't think it's got a US, if I remember correctly. The French hasn't caught up to...
Yeah, try that one. Just click on that, see what happens.
Okay. And once you go back, save, and you go back to this, it will ask you to resync the project. Now notice I've got it like that. Now let's resync it. You'll notice we'll come back once it's resynced. Come on, let's get out of the way. Just resync the project.
Hey Hal, did you get Glenn's training?
And there you go. You'll notice if you look over
It's
here.
his phone number. There, see?
But if you want to, no mask. There should be one which says. Hold on. There should be one which says according to project default according to project. But now
oh, to pick up the defaults, right?
Yeah. Just see if that does it. Click.
Whoa.
Oh, come on. No, it doesn't. I've blanked it out.
Oh, I think you do have to. You're right. Maybe that's just a generic phone number. You put anything you want, huh?
Yeah, I think so too. That's a generic one. It's just I've done it as numbers, but
oh, you had none. Wolfgang, you had none. Can you on the screen?
Phone number, French phone number, phone number. Okay. Did I have none?
So you have to change that, right?
Okay. But usually there's a
So
way
just
to
pick the
default.
Oh, pick whatever came from the dictionary, the analysis.
Yeah, so it should default to the analysis if you. Oh, you have to put a super control down to, if I'm not mistaken.
Field. So what if you add a column, you resync it for that, and then you add the column to the screen?
It doesn't quite work. Shows it definitely, yeah. Oh, that's because it's in a database like that. But but you do it in the dictionary. But phone number, it just does phone number. So it just picks up a phone number. There's no order. The French number does.
Yeah, there's no masking. It looks like it's just that's kind of weird, isn't it? It's just like it's a string.
I think this one just. I think this one just allows you to have a phone number. That's it, and spaces. Let's just see. Yeah,
because it doesn't know if you're gonna put extensions or whatever.
That's the thing. So you can put that, but no alpha characters. Plus, so if you're phoning UK44 plus, so you can put that like that, but it doesn't seem to do any other formatting besides that. It just stops you from putting alpha in. But that's why I say
You can build your own, right?
you've got an option. You can write your own basically, and I would put it into the dictionary itself. Go there, and then go to item description and click on that little thing here, and then put that over here. So let's just try that quickly. My way, not Hull's way, the UK way. There's a dash in between, for example.
Well, that's how we do it.
And that's okay, good. Lucky me. Then you synchronize it, and I don't know if it automatically syncs to that. No, it doesn't. You see, it doesn't. I think you have to place a super control, if I remember.
Well, maybe because you already have it on, but if you added it in for the first time, it probably would bring it through, don't you think?
Yeah. If I do this, delete that quickly, drag it in.
And that might answer Frank's question.
Pick it up quickly. So that should then pick it up. There you go. And you put it originally on. There you go.
Frank, does that answer your question then?
And it links it automatically when you drag it off.
Frank had a question on resyncing.
Yeah.
You can push changes to your window control back into the analysis to the analysis with the little on-off button and the validate button. Oh, push it back from.
Oh,
yeah.
yes, I remember. Yes. Yeah. You can put this on. You put that on. Only the current element is modified. Update the shared information of the item in the analyst. So
push it back into the dictionary, to the analysis.
Yes.
God, that's really subtle. I don't remember that.
I forgot about that. But there you go. This is more than one way to do it. And that's a part about WinDev. I keep saying, every time I end up messing around and I say, by golly, this is great stuff. And you just seem to always see something new. And it's just exciting because every time you get something, it just shortens your workload. And you get back to being really focused on what you're supposed to be doing. Not so much focusing or worried about how to get the product done. Where most of the other what I had, you end up having to include this, include that to just do like a host lookup. Where here is a simple command for it. There's no inclusions, no API calls, so you just write the code and really get on with it. That's what I like about WinDev. Really exciting.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, or are you guys liking Wolfgang's series, or should we stop him?
Looks like there's no vote. So
yeah, we don't have to do them anymore. Yes, huh? No, I think they love it.
I think. Thank you, Al. I think, guys, if you want to see a particular topic for next week, give me a shout, Skype me, email me. Otherwise, I'll pick the next one myself. What I think it should be next. But if there's somebody pressing and if there's more than enough people wanting a certain thing to be done, give me a shot. I'll try and do that basic series.
I think you've been picking your topics pretty good, because that's where we get we have to understand that foundation, because that's where the confusion came. So I think you've done a good job picking them and clarifying it. But all right.
Thank you, guys. And
have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Cheers. Stop it.